249 Harrison Ave, adjacent to parcel R3A-2 in the South Cove urban renewal area. A number of years ago, the BCEC proposed a land swap to exchange their property with the portion of parcel R3A-2 of equal size. The purpose of this proposal is for the church to be able to expand its ministries to a new building on a rectangular site, as the existing triangular configuration limits the church's ability to expand in size and capacity. The relocation of the school facility located on the parcel has to take place prior to the commencement of new construction. As such, this extension will allow the church additional time to complete an approved site plan, show evidence of equity funds and financial commitments, and allow the relocation of the school facility to a different location, in addition to providing BPDA and city staff with additional time to resolve existing title issues.
Okay, thank you, Raul. Any questions from the board at this time? Hearing none, a motion's in order?
So moved.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, the ayes have it. Thank you, Raul.
Great, thank you.
Item number 13, request authorization to issue a certificate of completion in connection with Fan Pier Parcel D project located at 50 Liberty Drive in the South Boston waterfront. Motion's in order?
So moved.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, the ayes have it. Item number 14, request authorization to terminate the affordable housing agreement in connection with the 645 through 651 Beacon Street project, and to execute an affordable housing contribution agreement and to take all related actions. Tim.
Thank you, Chairman. The 645, 651 Beacon Street project, also known as the Hotel Buckminster, was approved in 2001 with the addition of residential units within the existing building, as well as additional units and parking in a new building that was planned adjacent to the property. The building adjacent to the building was never completed, and the additional residential units within the hotel have been since kind of reabsorbed into the hotel, leaving 2 IDP units that you could say are stranded in a hotel. So people are actually, in those units, will be living in a hotel. And it has become clear to us that those units are not consistently rented, and the owner has approached us to ask to actually buy out those 2 units, and then they would reabsorb that space into the hotel as part of their probably future renovations, and we would get a full current buyout rate of $380,000 per unit for those 2 units, and that would be paid all at once at the end of this calendar year. So that would go directly to projects that are in need of that money today.
Okay, Tim, are there any questions from the board?
By projects, you mean projects in support of affordable housing?
Correct. So the $760,000 would go to the IDP fund controlled by the Department of Neighborhood Development for the projects that usually they're doing at most about $100,000 per unit combined with other funding sources. So they would be able to create more than the 2 units that we're losing at this project.
Okay, if there's no further questions, then a motion is in order.
So moved.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, the ayes have it. Thank you, Tim. Item number 15, request authorization to issue a scoping determination waiving the requirement of further review pursuant to Article 80, large project review for the construction of 72 residential rental units, including 9 IDP units with off-street parking located at 37 through 43 North Beacon Street, and 9 condominium units, including 1 IDP unit located on Sinclair Road, and to take all related actions. Lance.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Director Golden, Madam Secretary. Where's our clicker? Just want to orient the board members to the project site. Right here is the Mass Turnpike. The project is at the intersection of Everett Street and North Beacon Street in Alston, right outside of Alston, right outside of Union Square. The project consists of approximately 94,017 gross square feet between 2 buildings. The building in yellow is a rental building with 72 units. The building outlined in red is the 9-unit condominium building. with 43 parking spaces shared between the two buildings. The unit mix for the rental building is 12 two-bedrooms, 46 one-bedrooms, 14 studios. The condominium building has a unit mix of 2 3-bedrooms, 2 two-bedrooms, and 4 one-bedrooms and 1 studio unit. Mount Vernon Company representatives are available to answer any questions for the proposed project. You will hear from Dave Chilinsky, the architect, and this project's unique because we have had many meetings and a lot of conversations regarding the ground floor retail is going to be donated with this project for 50 years for $1, which is going to be associated to the artist community. There are 9 units on the ground floor that are dedicated or designated to artist live-work spaces. And I'll let Dave Chilinsky take you away on the presentation.
Okay, thank you, Lance.
So highlights to the proposal. As Lance mentioned, there's a condominium building that is oriented here at the base of Harvester Street, which is a 1-block street, and Sinclair Road. The parking for the facility comes off of this 1-block street, Harvester, and then the actual parking is dug into the hill. That's the sort of designation here we're doing with this sort of darkened area. That's actually unexcavated, so it you'll see in a moment that it steps into the hill. On the ground level, as Lance mentioned, there's a gallery space here that runs along North Beacon Street and a public plaza. This red area is the lobby and amenity area. This group of units here on the ground level are those artist-oriented affordable units. And these are the sort of series of stacked loft and townhouse units in the rear. Some basic elevations. This is along North Beacon Street, recently completed building here on one side of Everett. This is our existing building. This is a view down Everett Street. You can see, I was mentioning to you about the fact that Harvester Street down here is fully below the level, over a level below North Beacon, that allows us to actually build the garage into the hill so it's not visible. The building itself terraces down to meet the existing red house in the rear. This is a view on Harvester Street where you see that existing building, the edge of the rental building, the edge of the condominium building, and again, this is Sinclair elevation. So as was mentioned previously, the notion about how this sort of public realm will be landscaped, we worked very hard with the BCDC to create something that truly will work as a public space outside of this gallery, and that we've incorporated in it hard surfaces, some landscaping, but some fixed seating that we think will be very effective at creating a great sort of public space along North Beacon. And then I'm going to take you a quick walk around. This is the Everett Street walk. This is looking back up towards Beacon from Everett Street. A little bit further back here where Harvester turns off here to the right. And then looking down Harvester Street. And one of the interesting things about Sinclair is it's actually a private way. But what we're working very hard on by creating it as a curbless street is to expand the feel of it. Right now, it only feels like it's about 14 feet wide because of retaining walls and things. We think we've done some sort of pretty creative work with making it a curbless street so that it actually feels very generous. We'll have trees, planters, and things to, protect pedestrians, but it allows the space to actually function in a very pedestrian manner when there aren't, the small number of cars that will utilize it. I'll also call your attention to the fact that in working with our neighbors and the IAG, we came across a very unusual circumstance where an abutting property, a group of townhomes that have their parking accessed off North Beacon, historically for the last 20 years have been driving across this parcel, despite the fact that they didn't own it. It was just part of the way the neighborhood operated. And so we worked very hard with them to design the building to allow that, and we've worked with them on an easement that would allow them to continue to use this, because the pattern of how they got in and out of their houses really won't work without this. So we worked very hard to incorporate the ability for that drive to remain on this property. This is up at North Beacon, looking back down Sinclair. We're going to be doing some work here, tabletopping the pathway here, again, to slow car access and pedestrian access down. The interesting thing about Sinclair for us is that it is wide enough to be able to bring Uber down there, to bring our moving trucks down there, to be able to bring our garbage truck down here. And without getting in all the details of the plan, all of those activities can work off of this private way, so that we're on a pretty busy street on Everett Street, and we're in a very busy street on North Beacon. And, there was a lot of conversation with our neighbors about how to incorporate those things, and Sinclair has allowed us the opportunity to do that.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions from the board?
How is this constructive easement being memorialized in the documents?
Yeah, we are providing a permanent easement. It will be a legally binding document at no cost to the neighbor, and it came as a total surprise to us. And we actually researched that they did not have a right to the property, even though they were using it for 20 years, because it was not adverse possession. The previous owner had let them use it, therefore it was not adverse. But we did know what a hardship it would have been for them, because the snowplow would not have been able to access through the back of their alley, and their property's value would have been affected in a very significant way. So we will be providing them with a legally binding easement in perpetuity.
Great. I had some questions. There were a couple questions noted in the letters. A lot of them I think you've addressed in your presentation, but if we can just back up from an open space perspective, can you give some context on the open space that's incorporated not only into this design, but in the kind of surrounding areas?
So let me back up to the plans.
Yeah.
So what we're doing in terms of overall open space is this front plaza and the ground floor is being set back off of North Beacon, and it ranges from 25 to 30 feet from curb to the first floor of the building. And that's where sort of this area for public gathering is. We're also setting the building off of the property line. The property line is about 8 feet off of the curb, and we're setting the building back 10 feet from the property line. So you end up with sort of a clear curb to building there of about 18 feet, which will allow for the street trees and what we think, part of I neglected to mention the fact that the branding of this building is that it's called the Art House, and it's about the celebration of art. And we are actually looking to incorporate art in you'll notice, I gather, right, the undulating facade actually creates some niches along the street as you walk. We're working with artists to actually populate those so that in that 18 feet that we create along a pretty busy street, which is Everett, that there, you know, it would be populated with artwork and trees and.
And the last question or concern raised is just around density. Can you provide just some thoughts on kind of how this fits into the context of the current and developing neighborhood of Alston?
Yeah, you know, let's see. I'm not sure we have it in this presentation any longer, but so in the course of working through with the IAG, we actually had a series of diagrams in which we looked at the site that's further down Everett Street, which, you know, obviously is zoned for redevelopment to come back up, and this is sort of the gateway up here at Everett. And that when you look at and I'm pointing to the sort of the first building that's been created here directly across the street from us, that we thought that matching this with our building at sort of the gateway and then having the building step down the hill and then along Harvester, I think you gather, right, it's that 4-story building, was the way to bring the building down into the adjacent neighborhood. These are the existing buildings. The plan for this area is for these to be immediately adjacent to us 5- and 6-story buildings. And while at the moment it appears a little out of scale with these adjacent buildings, the overall master plan is for these to be, you know, taller than they are. So this is sort of the gateway on either side of Everett to the beginning of that development.
Okay, thank you. If there's no further questions, and a motion is in order.
So moved.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you. Congratulations.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Item number 16, request authorization to issue a certification of approval pursuant to Article 80, Section 80E-6 of the zoning code for the construction of 45 residential units, including 6 IDP units, with 21 off-street parking spaces located at 30 Thorn Street, and to take all related actions. Lance.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Director Golden, Madam Secretary. The project site is a short walk from Mattapan Square and a little longer walk from Cleary Square and Hyde Park. It's right off of River Street, and at the street is a dead-end street, which is Thorn Street. This is 10 Thorn, 20 Thorn, and 30 Thorn. It's a vacant lot. It also abuts the MBTA commuter rail line, the Fairmont line. The project consists of 45 residential rental units with 21 parking spaces, with a unit mix of 15 studios, 15 one-bedrooms, and 5 three-bedrooms. There are 6 IDP units designated for the project. The developer has contributed $10,000 to the Parks Department in their fund for the parks. The project architect, Tim Longanger, how do you say your last name? Longanger, from Embark Studios, will give you a brief overview. The project's architect, Nick Zazula, is here to answer any questions for the board.
Okay, thank you, Lance.
Good evening. So closer look at the site here, where this vacant lot here. It was originally supposed to be, I believe, a continuation of the third building in this line, along with 10 and 20 when those were developed mid-century. The end of the street is the BHA housing development, the MBTA line, the commuter rail on the rear here. It's currently just overgrown site, some overgrown vegetation. Sidewalk ends before you get to this site. There's about a 9 to 10 foot grade change from one end to the next. That, looking at the survey here, you can see mostly occurs along the embankment here. So here's updated landscaping. We intend to improve the landscaping along the length of the street in front of 10 and 20 Thorn as well. The developer currently owns and operates those properties, including new trees, new plantings, upgrades to the sidewalk, continuing the sidewalk, because we are kind of, because of the grade change, the parking is kind of tucked into the hill. We have 21 spots, entry along access to the side here. You enter through the back. 19 of the 21 are covered. We also have covered bike parking in the corner here, some storage, long-term storage. Lobby, common space, trash room, elevator core along the front corner here. Looking at elevation, you can see the grade change. The building itself split into two masses to break up the mass of it. Combination of fiber cement siding and panels, framing element and some storefront to kind of highlight the entry here at the corner. This is the Thorn Street elevation. This is the northeast elevation, the high side of the site. So you can see the parking is not visible from here, and there'll be some deck space for the units along the bottom level here. Here is a rendering from the front corner. You can see parking to the rear here, kind of this framing element to kind of highlight the entry here. In terms of material, color and texture, we kind of split up between the two masses, treat them separately to kind of reduce the overall scale. And then here is a view from the upper side again with the deck space here and the parking below. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Does that conclude your presentation?
Yes.
Okay. Are there any questions from the board?
What goes on in the space between the two buildings?
Currently, there's parking for 20 Thorn, the next door building behind it. So there's currently access to that from there. We wanted to minimize curb cuts to maintain parking along the street there. So for both buildings, access is along the side and then in the rear. We felt it kind of created a better pedestrian access along the front to kind of get the parking behind.
Okay, if there's no further questions, then
One more question.
Oh, there you go.
Just one question. On, can you just speak a little bit on, as to why, from a parking ratio perspective of the number of units with the 21 spots, why we think that kind of makes sense for this particular area? Drawing a blank on which commuter rail line that is, but kind of trying to get a sense of, like, are people going to have, like, access to the transportation if we're not having a whole bunch of cars there?
Yes, we feel it's a combination to the access to the bus routes that go along River Street. And because the developer owns several other properties in the area, both on River and those two adjacent, they have some excess parking capacity that is not being used right now. And Nick has some numbers on that as well.
Yeah, Nick Zazula, McDermott, Quilty, and Miller. That's a good question. So we did meet with the East River Street Neighborhood Association on 3 occasions. We met with the Hassan apartment buildings at the rear, at the end, which uses Thorn Street for access to get to the rear. So parking was a consideration throughout that process. And as Tim had mentioned, they purchased those other 2 properties as well as 2 properties on River Street. So those were existing buildings and have been there for a long time. So the parking ratio that they're proposing at the new building is in line with the utilization rates at those existing buildings. So they've kind of taken the rates of what's there. They actually have a lot of excess parking at those other buildings, and so they didn't want to overpark this one. As a result, if there is a need for extra parking at this new building, then they can utilize those existing lots to help with any overflow. Also, 15 out of the 45 units are studios, and from our research in that neighborhood, with the buses and the train within walking distance from their other buildings, those units typically don't have vehicles. So the ratio starts to get more in line with what the norm is for this type of a building.
Okay, if there's no further questions on a motion as an order?
So moved.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, the ayes have it. Thank you, congratulations. Item number 17, request authorization to issue a scoping determination waiving the requirement for further review pursuant to Article 80, large project review for the rehabilitation of the Haynes House, including exterior improvements, system upgrades, energy enhancements, and accessibility improvements located at 725 through 751 Shawmut Ave, and to take all related actions. Dana.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Secretary Plahimis, and Director Golden. The item before us this afternoon is, as stated, a request by the Madison Park Development Corporation, Haynes LLC, to renovate the existing Haynes House building. The Haynes House building, I'm going to flip ahead just briefly to take us to a smaller map that shows where the project is, and bear with me as I point these things out. Located on Shawmut Avenue here. The Ruggles Station is further off the map here. Ruggles Street is here, and the DeWitt, newly constructed DeWitt Community Center, also by Madison Park Development Corporation, is behind the existing building. The land itself is part of an urban renewal site, and there is an existing land disposition agreement between ourselves and the development entity. The proposal, as mentioned briefly, I'll articulate that it is existing building, all family rental, all affordable, 131 units. The development team is proposing to perform much needed renovation on the exteriors, as well as perform renovations on some of the units within the building, so thereby providing for much needed enhancements that have gone uncompleted for quite some time. The development team and their architect will provide further detail about the overall process, but I will articulate that this will include some system enhancements, exterior renovations, site improvements, ground floor renovations, and, as stated earlier, enhancements to existing units. Very briefly, in terms of process, a project notification form was submitted in June of this year. There was a comment period that went from July 28th and then extended by mutual agreement to September 10th. The Boston Civic Design Commission waived its review for this project, and we held 2 sessions, one of which was a working session with the residents group of this building to provide opportunity for questions about relocation, et cetera, relocation management, which we'll talk further about, and also a public meeting held on September 5th. The completion of this process allows the development team also to utilize the funding sources that it has currently secured to complete this $18 million project. And so the timely review and approval facilitates that happening and for the construction to occur in a timely manner. And I'll stop, if you don't mind, on one small personal note. As a Boston native, it's a great pleasure, obviously, to be working with this agency, with this mayor. The Haynes House is a place that is very close to my childhood. When my parents separated, my aunt lived in the Haynes House, and we stayed with her there for a couple of years while things got worked out. And it holds a place that's kind of near and dear to my heart. And when we had one of the first resident meetings, I saw these wonderful women of a certain age walk into the room, and I have to say I got a little tear in my eye, because it reminded me of those days with my Aunt Oreen, who loved us dearly and fed us immensely. And, and to be able to help facilitate the completion of a project and a building that I was in when, as the saying goes, knee-high to a grasshopper, is very heartwarming, and it makes one realize why we do what we do. So with that, I will stop and introduce Russ Tanner, who is the Vice President of Real Estate for Madison Park.
Okay, thank you, Dana.
Thank you, Dana. I believe we're going to ask the architect to run through the slides. Is that the best approach? It's a brief slide presentation, and I'll be happy to address any questions.
Thank you. I'm Ross Spear. I'm with Davis Square Architects, and thank you. I can be brief. The project is a renovation project. The interior, I'll start with the interior because it's very simply driven by code compliance. There is little handicapped accessibility. We're providing all new compliance, 7 new accessible units in full accessibility compliance, and system upgrades. There are no sprinklers in the buildings. Fire alarms need to be upgraded. So the interiors are driven by code and system-related things. The real opportunities in the exterior of the building. This is the corner of Shawmut and Ruggles. The building right now, constructed in the mid-70s, early to mid-70s, 74 or so, is about 300-foot long, continuous building of brick, which is failing. This is the entrance off of their fire lane. The brick needs to be replaced. It's failing from the building. So that gives us, this is the entrance from the rear. This is an old photo and will soon be the courtyard between the new DeWitt Community Center and Haynes. So the exterior gives us an opportunity to put in all new materials that allow us to have a much better residential rhythm. The residents are very excited. They see this as an opportunity to really be proud of where they are, and to us to accentuate what was previously an undulating layer of brick is now defined by bay elements, field elements, a ground floor plane. Much better defined entry and much more open. Handicap compliance is less a ramp and more of a pleasant walkway. This is the rear entrance, which will be seamlessly integrated to the rear entrance to Ruggles. So this is the opportunity for us to move forward on the exteriors of the building. So that's our opportunity. The ground floor will see more renovations than pretty extensively, mainly driven by compliance and providing community rooms, office spaces, mail facilities, bike rooms, and other common area spaces.
That concludes the presentation.
That
We can answer
concludes
any
it.
questions if you'd like.
Okay, thank you, Dana. Thank you. Are there any questions from the board?
Lollipop sculpture?
Yes, it's there. It is at resident request. It is going to remain there and get cleaned up a bit. And we hope it eventually will be part of the other public art installations that we have in mind along Ruggles Street.
Thank you.
Are there any further questions?
It seems to me that this is exactly the kind of project that everyone in the city is dying for now. And it says it was financed back in the 70s by Mass Housing Section 13A. Like, I wonder if there's any I don't know, this isn't I don't know who could answer this question, but is the stream of money, why aren't we able to build more things like this now, I guess is my question. Is it just because things are more expensive?
Yeah, I would say from in my experience with other projects and other funding sources that we all deal with, that it's the scarcity of sources at various levels. It's at the state level, federal, et cetera, that there are limits to what can be built and how much there's there. And I believe my colleague Tim Hicks, who's the housing expert, is going to come and offer
Tim jumped
a
up.
slightly more
Tim.
nuanced version of my answer.
It was mentioned this was a 13A program. The 13A program was a program just of its moment that Mass Housing did, and all those units that were created by that program are now at risk, at severe risk.
Okay.
So the new
they had a time limit, you mean?
Yes. So the Newcastle Saranac project that we brought to you in conjunction with the 60 Kilmarnock project is a 13A. So we're saving those 100 units there. We're working on additional 13A units. Like I said, it was great to have it at that moment, but it's expired. We don't have programs like that. We don't have programs like the Section 8 project-based programs that we used to have. But thankfully, this is a 13A that was already in the possession of a nonprofit. So we're able to kind of take that next step to keep this one in the portfolio.
Are these permanent? Are these permanently affordable?
Absolutely. The affordability covenants, many of the units are right now already restricted, and then this refinancing will wrap around nearly all of the units in the project.
Great.
It'll be long-term.
Great. Thank you.
And I just wanted to confirm it definitely says that no one's going to be displaced, but you mentioned kind of relocation and how that's going to work. How is that going to work?
I'll let the development team describe it.
Again, Russ Tanner with Madison Park. This is our fourth occupied rehab, 3 of them in the village and another one on St. Patolph Street that the board here helped us with. So we're getting pretty good at that by now. And we just finished up Smith House, which was a high-rise elderly building, and we managed to undergo a thorough occupied rehab renovation there by emptying out a stack at a time, a vertical, entire 12-floor vertical stack. And so you have to accumulate vacancies, and then we relocated some residents, a few residents at a time, off to off-site units. renovated an entire stack, move people back in, go to the next stack. And that is roughly our plan here with Haynes House, is to we're hoping to be able to get 2 stacks at a time. There would be 14 units vacant, enough vacancies and a few off-site resources, empty them out, renovate those units, move people around. We're getting pretty good at it. And the goal here absolutely is not to displace anyone and to make sure that the affordability is consistent with the current occupancy and to keep people living here as long as they wish.
Okay, if there's no further questions, and Dana is recommending that we pass this. A motion is in order.
Love you.
So moved.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it.
Thank you.
Thank you, congratulations. Okay, item number 18, contractual. We need a motion to pay the bills and the invoices.
I move that we pay our bills.
Second. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Item number 19, personnel. Heather?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have 4 items for your consideration on the BRA personnel agenda. 2 appointments, Matthew Fitzgerald in the Office of the General Counsel, Shayna Berry in the MIS Department. 1 travel item for consideration, Trin Nguyen, Director of Office of Workforce Development, traveling for the National League of Cities City Summit in California. And lastly, approval of employee procedures as outlined in your memorandum.
Okay, thank you, Heather. Are there any questions from the board? Hearing none, a motion's in order.
So moved.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you, Heather.
Thank you.
Item number 20, Director's Update.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and through you to the members. I want to call attention to a couple of really significant accomplishments of staff outside of City Hall. Recently, the Urban Science Journal published a piece that was co-authored by multiple members of our research division staff. So I want to thank and congratulate Phil Granbury, Christina Kim, Matt Ressiger, Jonathan Lee, Alvaro Lima, and Kevin Kang for the article that they recently had published. And it focused on population projections and methodologies that effectively can help us identify future migration trends into and out of cities. So this is a methodology that's important to us, given what we do for a living. So much of what we do is about demography. It's about the population. How many people are coming here? How many people are exiting? What do they need? Where do they need to work? What skill sets do they have that allow them to work? So demography in so many ways is destiny for us, and it's really important for us to know not just who's here now, but who's likely to come and who's likely to leave, and again, what their needs are. So this population projection methodology helps us with our planning, our development, and our policy-making activities here at the agency. So thanks to our research division for their work being published and recognized in the Urban Science Journal. Also similar, sticking with academia for a while, there's an exhibit over at the Harvard Graduate School of Design. It continues through the middle of October. It started in the summer. It's called Urban Intermedia, City Archive Narrative. And fundamentally, to oversimplify what this exhibit is about is telling the story, the present reality, the history, telling the story of 4 major global cities, Berlin, Istanbul, Mumbai, and Boston, purely through visual narrative as opposed to verbal or written narrative. So this is a concept for telling a story without the words. And again, it's an exhibit that is being carried on through the middle of October at the Harvard Graduate School of Design. Our research department made significant contributions to this effort, as did Ala Ziskin in our GIS department. So I thank them all for their contributions. Tonight's a quick meeting. In my 10 years here, I don't think we've gone this quick in any of them, so I don't want to slow it down. But I do think it's worth pointing out. As of right now, we're just under 11 million square feet of development approved for this calendar year. That puts us probably about the 3rd most prolific year for approvals of the past dozen. It may be even higher than that. I looked at the past 12 years. So right now, it looks like we're about third out of the past 12 years for sheer volume of square footage permitted. By the end of the calendar year, it could actually perhaps move into second position. So once again, this reiterates that we remain in a period of unprecedented growth. And again, not only are these projects and this square footage being permitted, people are going over to the Inspectional Services Department and pulling the building permits that allow these projects to actually get in the ground. So the building boom continues. The activity of this year by the board, the approvals continue to manifest that reality. And again, it pays significant dividends for all Bostonians. And with that, I thank you and have a great night.
Okay, thank you very much, Brian. We need a motion to adjourn.
I move we adjourn this meeting.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.
It's not even 5 o'clock.
No. This was the quickest ever I've ever lived.
Thank you to the Boston Police Gaelic Column Bagpipers. Good afternoon. My name is Pat Cahill Hoban, a member of the Mass 9/11 Family Advisory Committee. It is my privilege to have the Honorable Martin J. Walsh, Mayor of Boston, to preside over this wreath-laying ceremony. I am also pleased to welcome the Honorable Charles Baker, Governor of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and Mrs. Baker, the Commissioner William G. Ross, Boston Police Department, my dear family members that are here with me, and all of you family members, friends, and the public to the Garden of Remembrance 9/11 Memorial. This was the first monument erected in the Boston Public Garden in over 80 years when it was dedicated in July 2004. Thanks to the efforts of the Mass 9/11 Fund, over 50 families' input, the late Thomas Menino, Friends of the Public Garden, the September 11, 2001 Memorial Endowment Project, and a grant from the United States Department of Agriculture Living Memorial Project. The tree to the left of the memorial is our survivor tree, grown from a cutting of the survivor tree at Ground Zero. To start this ceremony, I am pleased to invite Father John J. Conley, Boston Police Chaplain, to offer a prayer. Father Conley.
Let us pray. Good and gracious God, we come together this afternoon in this historic public garden and in this garden of remembrance as we commemorate the terrible events of 17 years ago. We come before you, Lord, with hearts filled with sorrow and pain for those who lost their lives that day, but also with hearts that have been soothed by the way we as a people, we as a Commonwealth, we as a nation and a city have responded to those events. Lord, in these days when people seem to lose faith in both civic and faith institutions, when the civil discourse is not nearly as civil as it should be, help us through our commemoration of the events of 17 years ago to remember that we are never stronger than when we are together, that we can do more things and do them better together than we can ever do apart. As we remember those whose lives were lost that day, Lord, in this ceremony we remember in a particular way the men and women who were the first responders in New York, in D.C., in Pennsylvania, and the men and women who serve our nation at home and abroad to serve, protect, and defend us each and every day in the years since and in this present moment. As we pray today, Lord, we offer a special prayer for those men and women from the Massachusetts Emergency Response Team that is traveling now to go towards the folks affected by Hurricane Florence. Lord, we ask you to continue to bless our nation, to bless all of us as we honor the memories of those who have gone before us, to help us remember that it is in you that we find our strength, and that the strength you give us is meant to be shared so that we might grow to be one strong people, a people united in love of liberty and of peace, who seek to be men and women who protect freedom by sharing its values not only here at home, but throughout the world. Bless us this day, dear Lord. Help us always to remember, never to forget, and to honor the memory of those who have gone before. And conscious of the way all of you pray, I pray, Lord, that you will bless us this day. In the name of the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Thank you, Father Conley. Now, the Honorable Martin J. Walsh, Mayor of Boston.
Thank you very much, and I want to thank you, Pat Cahill-Hoban, for emceeing us today, and to all the 9/11 Fund families. Thank you for joining us today. Father Conley, as always, thank you for your prayers today. I'd also like to just recognize from Public Safety, Commissioner Gross from the Boston Police Department already been mentioned. Commissioner Joe Finn from the Boston Fire Department is here as well with us, as well as Chief Green from the MBTA Police. Thank you to all our first responders who keep us safe every single day. To everyone who lost somebody they love on that September 11, 2001, 17 years ago, I want to say thank you for sharing this sacred day with all of us. Pat mentioned the sibling tree. It's right there to the left of us. When we grew it, when we planted it 3 years ago, I believe, it was about 2 feet high, and it's booming over our public gardens. In a couple more years will be. So that's our sibling tree, and in front of it, it signifies a plaque that we planted the day that we planted it. The scriptures tell us that we are all children of the light. We do not belong to the darkness. That's what we are here to remember today. With this community of survivors as our beacon, we remember those precious lives that we lost 17 years ago. We're here to remember the light they brought into this world. We're here to make sure that their stories live on, that they continue, and we continue to honor them in the way we live, in the way we love, in the way how we treat each other. Today, all over our city, and all over our country, and all over the world, we see incredible acts of kindness. We see profound acts of love. It's a National Day of Service. The goodness of mankind is a light that can never be put out. So as we lay the wreath with you today, we resolve to honor this example that you, the families, have given us and shown us. We resolve to stand united as a community with all the families here today and that couldn't be here today. I want to thank you all, and I want to say God bless all of you that are here today. Now I'd like to ask the Bavis family to join me and the governor in laying the wreath. Mark Bavis was on flight 175 when we lost him. We're joined today by, I'm going to just name the girls, Mary, Kathleen, and Mary Ellen, and I know the boys are here as well, and there's nieces and nephews and everybody here, so I want to ask the Bavis family to lay the wreath.
Right here, right here. Come on, boys.
Mrs. Davis's husband, 29 years on the job. Lost his wife.
Now, I would like you to join me in a moment of silence. Thank you for your respect, and let me introduce Officer Kim Tavares and Officer Stephen McNulty, the Boston Police Department's singing duo who will sing God Bless America.
God bless America.
Man that I love,
Stand beside her
and guide her through the night with the light from above,
from the mountain
to the prairie,
to the oceans wide with foam.
God bless America,
my home, sweet home.
from the mountains
To the prairie,
to the oceans wide with foam. God bless America,
my home, sweet home.
God bless America,
my home, sweet home.
Your neighborhood, because that's what's important. Keep working hard, and best of luck this school year.
So this is one of our busier bus stops across the city, and so the idea here is if you have a bunch of parents and students gathering and waiting, why not make it engaging? So this play installation involves STEM, involves engineering. It was actually built by local students, a little found materials and recycling, and then a little music and play. And so just a way of keeping students and families engaged while they're waiting for their yellow bus.
This is great for kids, though, when they're waiting for the bus.
I said some of the kids will love it, all right?
Yeah, I can imagine.
Before we arrived, there were about 20 kids all playing on the instruments, not to mention the bubbles and chalk. We have the mural crew out here as well, and I think that just a more engaging way to start the day.
What I love most about this building is not the beautiful floor-to-ceiling glass windows. It's not the phoenix in the gymnasium. It's not the quotes that adorn the walls. It's the way that this building creates community.
One thing that always strikes me about Boston Prep is the students represent the diversity and the promise of Boston's youth. Each person brings a unique perspective to the table. Many of the students have overcome challenges, and what I mean by those challenges, some immigrants that came from a different country.
This expansion for a school means a lot to my family. It means more students getting the opportunity I and my siblings had. So thank you to our community and to the people who have been there since day one, and to the new supporters as well.
The future is not about how our young people get educated. The future is about making sure that they're on pathways to success, and that's what's happening right here at this school. 3, 2, 1.
That's a great thing to learn.
Didn't listen enough? Yeah. What else didn't I do? Middle of the Atlantic Ocean. That's what I think. All the way across the ocean. Albania. Puerto Rico. California. That's not another country yet. Morocco.
This $3 million investment helps to make sure that the community center is not only accessible, but it looks good, it feels good, where people want to come in.
Our community centers are such an integral part of our families' routines, no matter what their ages are.
We wanted this center to make sure that it continues to be a welcoming place, a safe place, an educational place, an inspiring place, and a cool space.
The people who live in this community are the very people who are going to breathe life into this building.
This is a very special day for my community and my family because, this is my second home.
Little ones are going to come running through this neighborhood. A year ago, they came to a neighborhood that didn't look like it cared about them. And 1 year later, they're coming to a neighborhood that's opening their arms to invite them. So thank you very much.
We refer to this event this morning as a commemoration of September 11th. That term, at least in my opinion, has a really dual purpose. The first is to clearly remember those who died and those who were injured on that date at the four events. The second purpose is to honor those who responded so valiantly to try to save those many people who are in danger.
Although time has passed, the old wounds of grief are still there. But there is also resilience and hope to take its place.
May we all here find blessings in our lives, hope in our days, comfort in our nights. And as we have promised and heard time and time again today, let us never forget those we lost.
It's my great honor to be here this morning to celebrate the 37th anniversary of the South Boston Vietnam Memorial.
As often been said, it can never be forgotten. 37 years ago, this community did something remarkable. Southie came together, the general talked about Southie.
came together to make sure their fallen soldiers be remembered with honor and dignity.
I think often of the pain endured by the mothers and the families and the sons and the siblings of the family members listed on this wall.
Whatever you think about the war, honor the sacrifice and the commitment that was made by these young men.
Is now in session. Just a reminder, please, make sure your cell phones are off. And if you need to have conversations, please take them outside of the room. In conformance with the open meeting law,